Yeah.
So what we're going to do is, now we're going to use something, this new topic we're going to talk about is cookies. Not really a new topic, something you've heard before. But we're going to be using the concept of JavaScript where something happens when your page gets loaded. So a cookie, there's kind of a debate where this name came from. Something, if you go on Google and say, why do they call them cookies, you'll get different explanations. I don't know if any of them are really true. It might be that you leave crumbs on your browser, so when you come back later, there's stuff there from the last time you were there. And then also this explanation about magic cookies, which has something to do with the Unix operating system, and this is something like it. But not 100% sure why these are called cookies. But when you go on a web browser to a website, like, have you ever gone to a website where it'll say, like, email, does a form, and then it says password, and a submit button. And maybe the first time you go to this website, you type in an email and a password, and you submit, and you log in. Sometimes it'll even ask you, do you want this? You might get a question something like, is this a public machine or is this your private machine? Would you like us to remember your password? And you might answer yes or no. So this is in the topic of cookies. But the idea is basically this. On the machine you're on, for the particular web browser you're on, because you could have multiple web browsers. You could have Internet Explorer and Chrome, and they'll have a different place to record this stuff. So for the machine you're on and the web browser you happen to be on, and the web page you happen to be on at the time, you could save whatever you type in here. So you could type something in here. So I'll use Costanza at Seinfeld.com. Anyone know why I use Seinfeld? Well, okay, anyway. And the password could be, you type in the password Bosco. Anyone know that episode where that was George's password? It's Bosco. No one? You guys don't watch Seinfeld? Okay, never mind. All right, so I need an example of a password, so I always use that one. Okay, so anyway, we could record those values in what the web browser recalls a cookie, but it's actually, and then if you start reading about these, they start breaking up the cookie into a bunch of cookies. So you almost might think of it as a cookie tray. But every web browser has a field called cookie. And all this is a really long string of characters. And we can add and delete from this string. So for example, we might add to this string the email address. Oh, I'm sorry. We would go something like this. So we have to have like a name and value pair. So it would be like email equals and we could do semicolon and an expiration for it, because maybe we'll have the name show up every time this person comes back, but maybe it'll only last for a month or a year or something like that. It might not necessarily last forever. So we're going to have some timestamp, an encoded timestamp, and if today's date is past that, we'll just delete this information. And then we'll say semicolon, and that's really the end of that piece of information. So what we're recording for this web browser is the email field. If any JavaScript wanted to read the email field from the cookie, they could display it onto the screen if they wanted to. And then if we wanted to, we could say password. We could create another cookie equals Bosco. And then we could also have it expire. And we could just keep adding to the string forever. So for every web browser, we could just make up a name, like email, and say the email equals this email address. And if we have the option of having a timestamp, so it could last into the future. And then we could say the password equals, And we could say the first name equals, and the second name equals, and the third name equals. So I think originally these separate pieces were called crumbs. These used to be, so this whole long string, which was a collection of this field equals this, and it expires on that date, this field equals this, it expires on that date, that's referred to as the cookie. And then each piece of this are like crumbs of the cookie. But a lot of the textbooks, and if you read about this on Google, tend to refer to this as a cookie, and this is another cookie, and another cookie, and another cookie. So then it's kind of like you have one cookie which is made up of a bunch of cookies, which gets a little confusing. So sometimes, what I did in our code, the code we'll go over tonight, I call this thing the cookie tray, meaning it's a collection of cookies. It used to be one cookie was made up of a bunch of crumbs, but then they keep referring to the crumbs as cookies, so I kind of call them a cookie tray. So nobody will see this on the web page, but this information is there. If you wanted to, as you're building the web page, you can read this if you want to and display it if you want to. And if somebody types something into your web page, you can record it onto the end of the cookie or cookie tray, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so so I tried to make the code, I always try to make the code on one page so it's easy to follow, but sometimes it makes the example so simple we don't quite have an appreciation for where this can go. So just be mindful, we could do a lot with this. This is a really simple example of code. And so we have a web page, HTML on top, here's the header. The header ends down here, and the header is a good place where we can embed our Java code. And then the bottom of the web page is just saying on load, call this routine check cookie. Okay, so now I'll just kind of walk through what this code is doing. It's really simple. The web page hardly does anything except that it has this code that we could use. So when the page loads up, we say check cookie. We call the routine check cookie, the function check cookie. So what does check cookie do? Well, all we want to do is look through that cookie or cookie tray. We want to look through that for some field to display. And in this example, I'm only going to have one. So I'm not going to have email equals this and password equals this. I'm not going to have many. I'm just going to have one in this case. But realize we could have many if we wanted to. So what we do is I create a variable called username, and then I call a routine called getCookies, which maybe I should have called getCookieTray, but or getCookies with an S. And then I say I'm looking for the username. So out of all the things we could have added to the cookie or cookie tray, whatever we want to call it, we could say email equals this, and password equals this, and username equals this, and so on. We could just keep adding a list of stuff. So I happen to decide that username is one of my fields. So now I'm saying, I'm calling a routine called getCookie. So if the cookie is in there, if the cookie is in the cookie tray, it's going to return a value. If it's not there, then I'm going to ask the person to fill it in. So in other words, the way this is going to work, a page is going to come up. If the person has never gone to this page before, it's going to say to you, it's going to say, please enter your name. They'll type in some name, hit enter, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take that name they gave us and add it to the cookie tray. So that if they come back later, we won't ask them what their name is, we'll say hello, whatever your name is. So that's kind of the idea here. So when they first go to the tray, we go looking in our, when they first come to this page, we go looking through our cookie tray to see if we've seen this person before. So what we do is we go check cookie to see if this person has been here before. So we say, go to the cookie tray and look for a username. So that sends us to this function up here called getCookie, and we pass in the cookie name. So the cookie name is username. Now this code basically says I'm creating a variable called I, X, and Y, and I'm also making a cookie tray. And what's the cookie tray? Well, the document, that's JavaScript calls whatever web page you're currently on is called the document. Right? We've seen this before. The document's cookie. So this is kind of where I say maybe they should have called this cookie tray. But the field called cookie is the list of all the cookies. We're going to split them up by semicolons because that's the way they were recorded. They're recorded with semicolons between them. And then we have this for loop, which goes from 0 on through the number of elements in the cookie tray. So whatever the length of the cookie tray is, we're going to go through each one. So for example, if the cookie tray has email equals this, and password equals this, and then username equals Jim, we're going to look at email and go, that's not what we're looking for. Go to the next one. We're going to look at password. That's not what we're looking for. Go to the next one. Username, this is the one we're looking for. So the X coordinate ends up being the cookie trays, the substring that starts from 0 and goes all the way up until you see the equal sign. So that would be like if it said email equals. So we would be the, X would be pointing to, X would be the substring that spells out email. And then Y would be whatever the email is. The Y ends up being the index right after the equal sign. So it's the index of the equal sign plus 1. So right after the equal sign until we hit the end. And that'll end up being what Y is. And then don't worry so much about what this is. I can explain this a little bit later on. Basically removing some characters that might not make sense as far as the X field is called. So then we say if the field we're looking at matches the cookie we're looking for, then we're going to return the corresponding value. Right? So really what we're trying to do is this. If we have, let's say, 3 cookies in our cookie tray, one is email, one is password, and one is username, we're going to say, we're saying, get me the username. So that we pass in username, comes in as the cookie name. And then we look at the first one, which is email, and say if email matches username, well, they don't. Email is one thing and username is another. So they don't match. So we go and we look for the next one. If password equals username, well, they don't equal each other. So then we go and get the next one, and then we say if username equals username, then we return the value of Y. That's what the username equals. Right? So everything is a pair, right? We say email equals the email address, semicolon. Password equals the password, semicolon. Username equals whatever the person's username is. And what we're doing is looking for that field. So now this unescape Y, yeah, let me explain what that means now. I could say, I'll explain it later just to keep it simple. But for example, if we were recording somebody's password into this list of cookies, that could be dangerous, right? Because if somebody opened up the cookies and read through it, they could see people's passwords. Someone's password from yesterday. That's not good. So it'd be nice if we could take values like passwords and encrypt them to turn them into a value that the human eye couldn't understand, but the web browser could understand. Right? Does that make sense? That we want to do this extra step. So whenever we record a field, we encrypt it in a way that only the web browser can understand it, and the web browser could unencrypt it. So an example of encryption, this is something that's simple, but let's say like every letter, let's say you typed in a word and your encryption scheme was to add one more, record the letter one after it. For example, if you were recording A, B, and C, you would record B, C, D, right? Now, the thing you're trying to hide is A, B, C, but you're recording B, C, D, and the web browser knows to subtract the letter when it unencrypts it, and it'll turn it back to A, B, and C. So that way it gets recorded in a way that's not what you typed. It's recorded as something only the web browser knows, and then could unencrypt it later. That's a simple encryption mechanism. People can find that out. They use a little bit more complicated encryption ones. So it just looks like, if anyone saw the cookie tray, it would just look like garbage. They couldn't tell what it meant. So that's why we're unescaping it, and then obviously when we put it in, we have to encrypt it, which is over here. We'll get to that in a second. So at this point, if we find a match between what it is the cookie we're looking for and what its value is, we unencrypt it and then return that value. Okay, and then the only other function we need to know is to set the cookie, set the value. So if somebody wanted to set a value, if somebody wanted to say this email is equal to costanza@seinfeld.com, we would call this function. We would say, we would pass in the cookie name, which is email. We would pass in the value, which is costanza@seinfeld.com. And then we could say, and this cookie stays alive for the next 10 days, if we wanted to. So how do we set something to the cookie string? Well, we create a variable called expiration date. We get today's date from the computer. And then we take expiration date, we set its date to the date that we got plus the number of expiration days to go. How many days from now should this thing expire? And we have a variable called cookie value, which encrypts the value that was given to us. That would be like costanza@seinfeld.com. Plus, if they did give us a date for how long it lasts, well, if they didn't give us a date, we'll say it doesn't last. Otherwise, it expires at whatever we calculated our expiration date, and then we have to write this to a string that has a timestamp. Right? We don't want to say it expires 10 days from now, because every time we went to it, it would still keep thinking it's 10 days from now. We have to have what time does that equal, and that's when that cookie would expire. So that's what this toUtc string, it'll convert it to that kind of string. So now we say for this document, the cookie field, which I'm now kind of calling the cookie tray, the collection of cookies, I'm going to add cookie name plus the equal sign plus cookie value, and the cookie value could be like the email address plus the timestamp. I'm going to add that to the cookie tray. Okay, so when we put this all together, what's happening is when the page gets loaded, we call check cookie. Okay, we come up here, we check the cookie, and what do? The first thing we do is we say, well, I'm looking for a username. Do we have a username? Let me see if we have one. So I call get cookie. So now I'm looking through the cookie tray looking for a username. It may or may not be there. So I go through every cookie in the cookie tray until I get to the end of the tray. If I find something, I'll return its value. If I don't find anything, then I will hit the end and return nothing. So after I ask for can you get me the username of this person out of the cookie tray, I say if the username does not equal null, so exclamation point equals means does not equal. If I found if this person has come to this page before, then I'll say to that person, I'll just put up an alert window that says welcome again and whatever your name is. But if I don't find this person, if this is the first time this person has come on this web browser to this web page, then I'll say their username is, and I'll pop up a window that says, what is your name? Please enter your name. They'll enter their name, and the result will get recorded into the username field. And now what we want to do is record whatever they said their name was. We want to record that in the cookie tray for later. So when that person comes back again, we'll just say welcome whoever you are. So then after they've told us what their name is, I'll say if they gave us some name, any name, I'm going to call set cookie, and I'm going to say the username now equals whatever the username is, and I'll let it expire 1 year from today. So I'm putting in 365 days from now is how long this cookie will last. So when I call this routine set cookie, that's this routine, I'm passing in the username, the actual person's name, and how many days from now it will expire, and I'm just writing that to the cookie tray. And now that will be part of the cookies for the next time this page comes up. So, I mean, I know it's, it's 3 different functions that got added. And like I say, when the page gets loaded, we check to see if the cookie's there. If it's there, we say hello, whatever your name is. If not, we ask them, what is your name, and then set the cookie. And then the next time they come back, we'll just keep doing this. So the set cookie, the check cookie will go to get the cookie. If it's not there, we'll ask them to set the cookie. And if it is there, we'll just display it. So the way the page works is like this. It's on my Zurak. JavaScript / cookie. Oh, this is weird. Okay, so I'm going to this page. This is on Windows Explorer. So, script from, please enter your name. So we are here. Please enter your name. So the script is prompting us to enter the name. Why is it asking us to enter our name? Because it doesn't know, this is the first time I'm going to this site on this machine. It doesn't know who I am, what my username is. So in the list of cookies, which is empty right now, it couldn't find anything. So what happened was, we went to, with the page got loaded, we called check cookie. So obviously this browser knows JavaScript. And I went to look for the username, and there are no cookies, or cookie crumbs, or cookies in this tray, however you want to call it. There are no cookies named username, so it's asking me for my name. So if I type in my name, what name should I put in? Snooky. And hit enter. It should take it. Now that I reloaded the page, I just reloaded the page. So on load, it now called check cookie again. But this time, I said username. So yeah, let me write down what happened the first time I went to this page. The cookie or cookie tray was empty. So cookie equals nothing. I went to this thing, so cookie equaled nothing. It was an empty string. I went to the string saying, is there anything in here called username? If so, what does it equal? And there was nothing there. That's why the window popped up saying, please enter your name. After I entered the name, I called the set cookie routine, which did this. Username equals Snooky. Oh, it's spelled without an E, right? And then semicolon, and then it calculated what is 365 days from now and put a timestamp in. So it's a timestamp that looks something like, what's today's date?
27th.
27th?
Mm-hmm.
So like 2013, something like that was recorded in our cookie tray. So the first time I brought up the page, there was nothing here under cookie. Then it asked me, what is your name? I gave it a name, and it wrote this to the cookie string. Now I'm coming back to the page. This time I'm saying, is there anything in here called username? Yes, there is. Okay, then give me this. And then I'm going to display that. And it'll do that as long as it hasn't expired. This thing will stay in the cookie string. Once this expires, then when the web browser closes, it goes through all the cookies and deletes all the expired ones. So this will actually be in that tray now for a year, because I said it's good for 365 days. So that's why when I come back to this page and reload it, now when I go to reload the page, it goes to check the cookie to see if we have a cookie. It says, can you get me a cookie with this name? And now it found a match. So we passed in username, which came up here. We said out of all the cookies in the cookie tray, X pointed at the beginning of it and Y pointed at the thing right after the equal sign. And we said if X matches the cookie name, then return to me the Y part. So what that's saying, just once again, is this. It's saying, it's making X is being set to this piece, that's X, and this piece is Y. And then we'll go, and if there were many cookies after this, or cookie crumbs or cookies, whatever you want to call them, if there were many after that, we would keep resetting X and Y. We'd go walking down looking for a match. But we eventually got to the point where this was equal to X, and we said, the thing I'm looking for is the username. So if the username equals X, then tell me what Y is, because I want to display Y. And keep doing that as long as it hasn't expired. So, when we go to reload the page, we go check cookies goes and gets the cookie, we're passing in username. X ends up being what's in the cookie tray starting at 0 and going through until it sees the equal sign. And Y equals the thing that is 1 after the equal sign. And then we say if X equals the thing I'm looking for, then return Y. And then the encrypting and unencrypting is so if somebody ever got to see this cookie thing, it would actually be, you wouldn't be able to read it. So I'm sorry, the unescape and the escape part. So now if you keep coming back to this screen, it'll always, now it knows it's me, so if I reload it again, it knows I'm this person. But if I bring up a different browser, this is Internet Explorer, if I bring up Mozilla, which is already running somewhere, I think it's running at my desk back in the office. If I bring up Chrome, Chrome, and go to the same site, assuming Google Chrome uses a different cookie tray than Internet Explorer. Yeah. So if I go to JavaScript / cookie. This is Chrome I'm bringing up. Chrome doesn't know who I am because it's a different browser. Now if I say to Chrome who I am, who should I be this time? Any names? Who else is on the Jersey Shore? Situation. Okay. So now if I reload, how do you reload on Chrome? Okay, now it's saying welcome again, situation. So now it knows who I am. So each browser, machine, web page combination has its own cookie tray. So if the situation comes back on Chrome from this computer, it'll say welcome back. But if someone else comes, actually, no matter who it is, it'll always say welcome situation. So then the question is, how do we clear these cookies out? Now the problem is there's so many different sets of them, and also where are they being recorded? So if we bring up Internet Explorer, if you want to clear your cookies out, so if you go to Google and you say cookies, question. How do I clear? So this is just an interesting thing on Google. If you start typing in like some string, it fills it in with like the most commonly way that string has been finished. So people who type in how do I CLE, the third most common way this sentence is finished throughout the world is how do I clear my cookies? So look at my cache, my iPhone screen. Okay. And then how do I delete cookies? Yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. There is no answer to this. It depends on what browser you use. So if you're using Chrome, click on this, it'll tell you how to clear your cookies. Internet Explorer 9 is one way, Internet Explorer 8 is another way, Mozilla Firefox is another way. So, you know, yeah, and then Netscape, who I think are the people who invented this concept, I think they're out of business now. There's all different ways for all different browsers. If you're using Apple, you're using a Safari. So you have to figure out if you want to clear your cookies. So if you find it too annoying that every time you go to a web page it's welcoming different people who've used your computer yesterday, you might find it annoying and just want to clear all the cookies out. So you could do that. But there is no one way to clear the cookies. It really depends on which browser you use. So you know, the concept I wanted to get across is the idea that cookies are something we can, you know, that kind of, it does cute things like says hello, welcome back, or, you know, probably when you go log into Facebook, when you bring up the Facebook page on your computer at home, it probably has your login. If you're the only person using that computer, it probably has that already put in. It might even have your password put in. So those things are kind of cute, but one thing we're going to definitely need these cookies for is when we create a login page. So this is something just to keep in mind when we do this later on in the course. Suppose we had a page called login. Login.php. And on that page we said email and password. And we had a button called login. Okay, great. Somebody comes to our web page and says, types in an email, types in a password, hits the button. We send this information back to our server, and we say, oh yeah, that's the right password. I'm going to let this person in, right? If they typed in the wrong password, then we would send them. So let's say we might send them to a page called try again. .php, and we might send them to a page called welcome. Welcome.php. Right? Maybe we'll send them to the try again page, maybe we'll send them to the welcome page. Depends if they got that password right. Right? So if they typed in that password wrong and went to this, oh, yeah, one thing. Let's say there's some members-only information here. Like when the date of the next, you know, event or something like that is. But only members of our club are supposed to see this, right? So you have to log in successfully before you can ever go to this page. If you log in, we could program this PHP page to say, if the password is wrong, send them here. And they'll be asked again, you know, for an email and a password, and try again. And this is your second attempt. Like that. If they get that password wrong, they'll go to this page. If they get the password right, they come to this page. But what if somebody just said, I don't have a password, I'm not a member of this club, but I was looking over somebody's shoulder and I saw that they go to a page called welcome.php. Like let's say this was www.facebook.com/login, and this was www.facebook.com. facebook.com/welcome.php. Okay? And let's say what Facebook does is it either sends you to this page or this page. Suppose you got the password wrong, but you were looking over somebody's shoulder and you notice when they get their password right, they seem to go to this page next. You could just go directly to that page, right? What's stopping you? That way you don't bother answering what is your password, I just want to go straight here. And then you could read all the members-only information. We have to somehow block people from doing this. So we want to ask them, what is their password? When they go to this page, we want to be able to somehow say, you have already logged in at some point in the past, so I'm going to let you go, right? But if you haven't logged in yet, then I'm not going to let you go. So this page is going to say, only if you have successfully only if you have successfully logged in earlier during the time you've had this web browser up, are you allowed to go here? But we're not going to ask them to log in, like every time they go to a new page, we don't say log in again, we just ask them to log in once, and then we record that they have been logged in. And then they're allowed to go to any page as long as they are already logged in. So how can we say you are logged in or you are not logged in? We could set a cookie for this whole browser. So we can actually make a cookie for what we're going to call a session cookie. And then we're going to say, okay, you're all logged in. You have permission to go to future pages that require login. So that's the like one important cookie we're going to be using later on. So when we go to do login for sessions, we're going to make the assumption you already know what a cookie is. So we could do like a cookie project just to have a little practice with this, but then we're going to create a login session which is going to require you to use a cookie.